Good evening, everyone. My name is Rick Schaffner, and I am the Senior Education Manager here at the Zuckerman Holocaust Center. Welcome to the opening program for our new exhibit, Nothing to Do But to Try, which explores the life and the art of the 20th century painter and Holocaust survivor, Boris Lurie. This exhibit is made possible by the National Endowment of the Arts and the Michigan Arts Council. We are also very grateful for the support of our many individual supporters who are listed also in the exhibit when you get a chance to see it. Thank you all for your generosity. Your support ensures that we can illuminate the lives of artists like Boris and bring in scholars like Stephanie Stebich this evening who can share their expertise and help all of us to absorb the deep and lasting trauma of the Holocaust. As is the case with many Holocaust survivors, Lurie's reckoning with the events really never ended for him. Stephanie, we look forward to your presentation this evening. And may learning about Lurie's life, his art, and legacy inspire us all and empower us to fight anti-Semitism wherever and whenever it appears. Now it is my distinct honor to welcome Jillian Gersten, Chief Development Officer of the Museum of Jewish Heritage, a living memorial to the Holocaust in New York City. A lifelong New Yorker, Jillian previously served in the museum in both the educational and development departments. She previously served as the Vice President of Philanthropic Initiatives at the Brooklyn Community Foundation and has served many arts and dance organizations in New York and Philadelphia. Thank you, Jillian, for being here tonight, and to the Museum of Jewish Heritage for curating the first showing of this exhibit, which contains previously unseen works. Following Stephanie's presentation, I will be back up here to moderate a Q&A, and we will take as many of your questions as possible. Thank you all for being here with us tonight. Jillian, welcome.
Thank you, Rick. Can you hear me? Good evening. It's my honor to be with you representing the Museum of Jewish Heritage, a living memorial to the Holocaust, where, as Rick said, this exhibit that we're opening tonight, Boris Lurie, Nothing to Do But to Try, originated. I'm going to put this down. My colleague, Sarah Softness, who curated the exhibition, truly wanted to be here, but she is on parental leave with her 1-month-old son, Oliver, so she's otherwise occupied. And I'm representing not just her, but all of our colleagues who worked with her on the exhibition. And I want to thank the staff of the Zeckelman Center who have not only welcomed this exhibition, but also welcomed me very warmly here today. It's my first time in Detroit, and I want to also say my first time here, obviously, as well. And I got a chance to tour I'm going off script for a second because having not been here, I didn't know what I would be able to say about the Zeckelman Center, and I have to say, I've been to many different kinds of institutions of memory, of Holocaust Memorial, of Jewish heritage, and I feel a real kinship with this institution in the ways in which you have chosen, much like we try to do in New York, to tell the stories of the Holocaust and the trauma that people experience through the artifacts and material culture and individual lives and stories and testimony. So I really I hope this is the beginning of many partnerships between our institutions. I also want to say I'm bringing greetings as well from our president and CEO, Jack Klieger, who particularly wanted me to thank Rabbi Eli Meyerfeld for his instrumental role in convening the network of the largest independent Holocaust museums in the U.S., of which both of our institutions are proud members. If you'll indulge me for a minute, I just want to say a few words about our museum, which stands as New York's contribution to the global responsibility to never forget. Opened in 1997, the museum is committed to the crucial mission of educating diverse visitors about Jewish life before, during, and after the Holocaust. We strive to play a leading role in Holocaust education in New York City and the tri-state area, serving many thousands of students each year with school visit programs, professional development opportunities for educators, our Speakers Bureau that enables conversations with survivors, and the creation of tools and resources such as the newly released Survivor Stories and Interactive Dialogue, and Compassion in Action, our online telling of the Danish rescue story that support educators in teaching about both historical and contemporary anti-Semitism. As a museum of history, memory, and material culture whose exhibitions are largely shaped by artifacts ephemera, and recorded video and audio survivor and rescuer testimonies, it's unusual for us to present, stated plainly, an art exhibition. However, this survey of the early and never-before-seen works of Boris Lurie, who was, of course, a brilliant and challenging contemporary artist, but also a Holocaust survivor, made sense as our first ever exhibition of its kind at our museum. The war series included in this exhibition, which includes quickly rendered drawings and major canvases, all with haunting expressive power, comprise what Sarah, the curator, my friend, refers to as a visual testimony, and thereby are completely on mission for us, in addition to being gripping and spectacular representations of the artist's memories and inner psyche. The Museum of Jewish Heritage would not have been able to bring this remarkable exhibition to life, nor to the Zeckelman Center, nor to the next stops on its journey, and may I say how proud we are that it's going to have an ongoing life beyond our walls, without the close partnership and profound support of the Boris Lurie Art Foundation. So it is an extra special privilege to be able to introduce tonight's featured speaker, Stephanie Stebich, who was appointed the first executive director of the Boris Lurie Art Foundation in April 2025. A distinguished museum professional, Stebich most recently served as senior advisor to the Undersecretary for Museums and Culture at the Smithsonian Institution. From 2017 to 2024, she was the Margaret and Terry Stent Director of the Smithsonian American Art Museum, where she led one of the nation's premier institutions dedicated to American art and craft. During her tenure at the Smithsonian, Stebich dramatically increased attendance, prioritized educational outreach through robust programming, and enhanced the museum's permanent collection through transformative acquisitions and gifts to the collection. She also led a major multi-year renovation of the museum's permanent collection galleries, scheduled for completion in conjunction with the nation's 250th anniversary in 2026. Before joining the Smithsonian, Stebich served as executive director of the Tacoma Art Museum for 12 years. Her tenure was marked by the expansion of the museum's physical footprint with the addition of 2 new galleries, as well as the acquisition of significant collections and major philanthropic gifts. Her prior museum leadership experience includes senior roles at the Minneapolis Institute of Arts, the Cleveland Museum of Art, and the Brooklyn Museum. Please join me in welcoming her.
Here we are on a beautiful summer evening in Michigan, and you have made a wonderful choice, and I'm grateful for that, to spend the evening here with us. And so let me tell you what we're going to do tonight. I'm standing between you and dessert, and we'll also have some Q&A because I know this is a curious audience. Thank you for the warm introduction, Jillian, and it was really a true pleasure to work with the Museum of Jewish Heritage. Again, a wonderful standout museum in New York. If you haven't been there, I urge you to run when you're next in New York. I'm also grateful to the leadership here at the Zeckelman, Rabbi Meir Feld and his, again, professional and warm and gracious staff, for welcoming me and this important exhibition. I'm truly delighted to be with you tonight to tell you about the powerful art and the improbable life of Boris Lurie, a Holocaust survivor and a New York City avant-garde artist. And it's a uniquely American story, a story of resilience and renewed purpose through art. For Boris, the works in this exhibition are really a meditation on remembrance. The compelling exhibition, as you heard, was curated by Sarah Softness, the Director of Curatorial Affairs at the Museum of Jewish Heritage, and she asked me to share a few words with you this evening. Here's Sarah. Though it is with great reason, being home with my 5-week-old son Oliver, I'm sorry to miss being with you all this evening to celebrate the opening. It's extraordinarily gratifying to see this exhibition begin its national tour here and to see Boris's story reach new audiences. Thank you to the fantastic team at the Zeckelman for making the exhibition shine and for being a pleasure to work with. Many who know me know that this exhibition, still at Sarah, was really my first baby. And I can admit to you in all truth and in absentia that Boris was very much in the running to be my son's name. In addition to viewing his artwork, Boris's, I spent dozens of lonely pandemic weeks immersed in Boris's personal archives at the foundation, stumbling through pages and scribbles and screeds and diary entries that few have touched since he saw them himself. And it is so rare to have such unfettered access to any person, let alone a Holocaust survivor. And I cherish the opportunity I had to get to know him and to produce this exhibition as a portrait. I hope you all find it illuminating. And she goes on to say, so here's to Boris Lurie, a dear friend I'll never meet. I also want to begin with acknowledging the tremendous debt we all owe to Gertrude Stein. No, not the Paris Gertrude Stein, but the New York Gertrude Stein. Our New York Gertrude, now in her 90s and sharp as a tack, has had a career as a successful art dealer. And she has not only amassed a spectacular art collection, as you might imagine, but was the first dealer to recognize the No Art Group. That would be Boris's contribution, and she showed Boris's work for many years. Over 50 years, she was the partner of Boris Lurie until his death in 2008. And so I want to recognize her contribution to the foundation and how she has worked tirelessly for 18 years to curate the exhibition, the foundation's founding collection, and bring numerous exhibitions around the world to elevate the story and life of Boris Lurie and others in his artistic circle. She has really created one of the top artist-endowed foundations in the country. And today, she leads the foundation with great wisdom and grace and wit, I might add. She's a great storyteller. And so on behalf of all those who know her, thank you, Gertrude. Now, on to Boris. This is an exhibition that examines through art and archives an extraordinary life. Boris Lurie, born in Leningrad in 1924, and would die in New York City at age 83 in 2008. He's best known for two bodies of work, this wartime series on display in your galleries, and another series. He would be the founder of this No Art movement, an avant-garde art movement, sort of wedged between abstract expressionism and pop art. It was sort of an anti-pop art movement. And stay tuned, we're working on a major exhibition about that chapter of his life in the future. Here we have him, this haunting photo of him, and even more beautiful, a very reflective self-portrait. And please note, I hope you can all see at the very top of the slide these haunting words. The basis of my art education I obtained in a camp like Buchenwald. And this really speaks to who he was as an artist, what that important formative experience was. Now, Boris was not a successful artist during his lifetime by conventional means, but he thought what a better way to ensure his legacy and the artists that he cherished than by thinking about a legacy for them after their passing. The project with the Museum of Jewish Heritage is so important because this is very private work. These are not works that Boris showed during his lifetime. They were for himself, and as the curator, Sarah Softness, I hope makes a compelling case, these works were an emotional catharsis for him. Boris, back to the quote about his art education, did not have a conventional education. At age 16 was the end of his education when he was, with his family, went into the ghetto in Riga, Latvia, and then went on to various labor camps and concentration camps. But as a young man, even then, his parents knew of his artistic talents. And they procured art education for him, private art instruction. And he did some work, and he even sold it. He was very proud of that achievement. Then, when he came to America, he tried the typical New York job, taxi driver. He lasted all of one day. I don't know what that tells us about Boris or New York City or being a taxi driver. But he pursued an art education sporadically, taking classes at the Art Students League in New York with the likes of famed artists like Reginald Marsh. So again, he had no degrees in art, with his formal education ending at 16. Yet, I think you'll see he was a gifted artist and storyteller. The important aspect of this exhibition that takes it beyond a mere art exhibition is the incredible amount of archival material. And it is not just to give Boris's background. Boris cherished these objects. He went back at great personal risk to collect these photographs. And he kept them with him during the war years, and he lived with them in his studio and in his home his whole life. Boris grew up in Riga, Latvia, although he was born in Leningrad. His parents were Russian-born, and he came from an upper middle-class family. He really talked about having a wonderful childhood, although he noticed and was subject to quite a bit of anti-Semitism in Riga. Boris had, here are his parents. His father was a businessman, and his mother was a dentist. Again, professionals, cosmopolitan people. Here's Boris with his father and his two sisters, Asya and Jenna. I'll talk about them some more. And here Boris is with his father and mother. Again, a gifted student and a gifted artist. He studied German and English at school. Russian was his native language. He spoke Latvian. And of course, for his bar mitzvah, he studied Hebrew. The fact that he was multilingual would go on to save his life in many ways. And he added more languages later in his life. He became proficient in Spanish, in French, in Italian, again, through his travels later in life. Here are, again, images of his beloved sister, Jenna, and we will talk about her history in a moment. And then the unthinkable happens. At age 16, the Nazis come to occupy Riga. This is in 1941, of course, and his family was gathered up and imprisoned in a section of town then known as the Riga Ghetto. They would spend some 3 to 4 months there until the next seismic event. Sadly, by year's end in 1941, his grandmother, his mother, his sister Jenna, and his childhood sweetheart Luba were murdered along 25,000 other Latvian Jews in what was one of the largest mass executions carried out by the Nazi mobile killing units, the Nazi Einsatzgruppen. Boris and his father, as men and as strong individuals, were sent to labor camps and then again on to a concentration camp. That they stayed together and that they survived is nothing short of miraculous. Fast forward, it was in 1946 when they would arrive in New York City, thanks to the efforts of his older sister, Asya. She was a bit of a rabble-rouser, frankly, and the family was worried that she would get in trouble with the authorities. So they sent her to Italian boarding school. And so she sat out the war there and would make her way to New York. And that was their opportunity to come to America. Again, after the war, they were like many displaced people and where to go. So what I want to share with you are these images. And look at the dates, 1946. Boris is 22, and he is in New York. And these are the first images that come to him. Like a writer, you're asked to write about what you know. And as an artist, you create from your lived experience. So this, as the curator Sarah Softness says, is very much a visual testimony. It is about deeply personal experiences. One of the interesting things as you go through the exhibition, and my purpose tonight is to give you visual breadcrumbs. So when you go into the exhibition, there are some works that you'll know a little bit more about. Notice how he shows us the backs of these individuals. Notice how that actually puts us in the picture plane as we are experiencing this. These are intimate works, except there are also some larger pieces that have their own haunting quality and a large scale. Most of these are untitled works, and that was just sort of a preference of his. He would continue that later in life. The exhibition, again, Art and Archives, is organized in a semi-chronological flow. However, there are three pillars or overarching themes that the curator has conceived, and this is the order of where you're going to see the exhibition in. But I start with this quote first, and I'll pause. This is where the title of the exhibition comes from. Since no one taught me anything, there is nothing to do but to try, and to try to convey this story, the story of his family and so many others. So there are three large categories in which the show is organized: attestation, and by that it is bearing witness. Next, ambivalence, again, some doubt, nightmarish qualities. And then advocacy. Throughout his whole life, Boris was an advocate for the people he lost, for the events he experienced. He was involved politically and was very up-to-date on current events. That was important to him as a person, as an artist. And so, attestation. We really begin with this haunting building where his family was moved to in the ghetto, 37 Lutza Street. And likely, from this window, he creates these drawings and many more. Again, look at the perspective. They're sort of out of a window, and what do we see? A lineup. People heading off to perform labor, or perhaps off to their death. And this death march to Rumbala, to the forest, which would ensnare his family, took place on two dates, November 30th and December 8th, 1941. Again, some 25,000 people were executed. This is an image also taken from an aerial view from the Jews lining up for the Riga ghetto. Boris claimed he was in this photo, but it's not something we can substantiate. But this was part of the research he did after the war. He wanted to know this story better, and he lived with these images. And when he would go back to Riga, again, he went back to Riga in 72 and continued to travel there and make notes, he would indicate what were important places. So you'll see there's the Lubia house, Grenzen, that means borders. These were the borders of the ghetto. Again, making notice of where he was. This is a piece with a title. It talks about where they passed torn fence in Riga ghetto. And again, Sarah Softness in the labels pulls from Boris's diaries he wrote when he was in America, diaries that were spawned by his return visit to Riga. Here he is sharing his thoughts of freedom, but really death. Here is a surreptitious photo taken. Again, the folks, we know this to be in Rumbala, walking along to the unknown, to their deaths. This is an image from Yad Vashem archives. This is also in Latvia, not in Rumbala, but elsewhere. And again, this was the methodology to bring people, to force them to undress and to be shot and laid to rest in mass graves. Boris was totally transfixed by images like this. Again, I'll show you an image of his studio where he has some of these images blown up. Here is, I think, one of the most haunting images, but you'll tell me if you agree. This is a portrait of his mother, but with what a title? Portrait of My Mother Before Shooting. Again, it's 1947. This is still fairly new for him, and this is in a very realistic, artistic style. It has a little bit of Rembrandt in the dark colorings, a very evocative, soulful image that he wants to make for himself. Again, private images. As an art historian, trained as an art historian, I want to bring to your attention another major modern art piece of a son remembering his mother. This is the work of Arshil Gorky. It's an image you can see in New York at the Whitney, and it is taken from a photograph of Arshil Gorky in his teen years and his mother. In this case, it's 1912, and as Armenians, they are suffering at the hands of the Ottoman Turks, the massive genocide there. Gorky, along with his mother and sister, would survive the death march and come to the United States, but his mother would die, and at age 15, Gorky comes to the United States. Again, adolescent memories, haunting memories of their mothers. Really, again, a meditation on remembrance. Here is an image, too, that was very much part of his daily life. Roll call. Roll call in the morning, roll call in the evening. You also have to remember there were so many people in these camps. These roll calls would take hours and hours. And if somebody wasn't there, they would start from the beginning again or launch a search. And of course, it would be very bad for you if you came late for this. Boris and his father were first incarcerated in a place called Lenta. This is still in Latvia, a labor camp. And then they were then transferred to Stutthof. This is east of Danzig by boat, and then later on to Buchenwald near Weimar. And Boris writes in his memoir that arriving at Stutthof was a great shock to him. It was nothing that he had seen before. This was not labor. This was really a harrowing experience. Here he has, again, more images. Clearly, the individuals in stripes are the prisoners there, and they're in most cases, again, we see them from the back. Not always, but it was a style he used. More images, and again, here you have this ship journey. Again, being loaded on ships, no idea where you were going, but you were leaving what you knew. You were leaving Latvia, and you were leaving those that you knew. These are some interesting things that Boris kept his whole life. Again, the archival work. This is a prisoner card from Stutthof. Obviously, he's indicated he's a Jew, and he's also, Grund means reason. Why is he a prisoner? He's a Latvian political prisoner and a Jew. And again, here we have other prisoners. Again, Russian prisoners, were all kinds of people brought here. And this recalls events that Boris noted in his diary. The image closest to me, at your right, was an evening where everybody was woken at the camp to go outside and witness a hanging. An individual had disrespected a guard, and this was the punishment. The image to your left, again, punishment. You see these men standing, in this case for hours and hours, buckets on their head and brooms in their arm. Again, this unnatural hue, this darkness, this is both memory and artistic references. Here is another identity card. This is up in the corner, you see Weimar. It's filled out some more, and again, a political Latvian Jew. This is the moment that is so important. This is the moment of his liberation. This is finally in 1945, the month of April. The Russians and the Americans are coming in, and there were murmurings at the camp that the war was ending, the Germans were going to lose, but what to do? Do you stay in the camp? Do you flee? Where is safety? Many who stayed were then rounded up and again marched away, likely to their deaths. So Boris, unbeknownst to his father, left the camp and went into town, into these burnt-out buildings. You can see the broken panes of glass, the curtains shuttering, and the view down of soldiers. He stayed there for a little bit, feeling a little safer. He went back to the camp, and then he hid in a bed and slept, a feverish sleep he talked about for over 3 days. And his father wakes him up and says, "Dummy, what are you doing? Where have you been? We have to leave." Again, these haunting images of people he would encounter. Again, anonymous, not portraits, but generic individuals. This is an original letter that is what his sister who was trying desperately to find out if her father and brother are still alive. Yes, indeed, they are alive. And she's writing to a friend to ask for diplomatic assistance to help her brother and her father. And here they are. Identification photographs, very important for makeshift passports or things in lieu of passports. And if you look closely, look at the jacket, they're wearing the same jacket. So it tells you about both their size and sort of the scarcity of things. Another identification card that Boris treasured because it was a source of pride. Because of his language skills, and his brother-in-law was in the counterintelligence corps in the U.S. Army, Boris got a position as an interpreter, again, in counterintelligence in the U.S. Army. And he did that for some 10 months, from 1945 to 1946. And he talks about what a remarkable time it was. He was meeting women, he was eating well, he learned how to drive a Jeep. And he said, I go from concentration camp slave to the elite victor overnight. Again, he's such a young man, and all of this is a very heady time. And yet, times are changing. It is June of 1946 when Boris and his father Ilya board a ship from Bremerhaven to New York City, again, sponsored by the daughter. And this is really where the artistic story begins for him. Again, a very haunting portrait. As all self-portraits are done, his image is in a mirror that he's looking at. He would go on to do more portraits. Again, this is 1946, the year he arrives in New York. We don't know who these individuals are. If you look closely, there are some photos of people he met in Germany. And so the woman in blue here could have been his German girlfriend. We're not sure. These could be people he knew, people he lost, people he met. In many ways, he's repopulating his world. More portraits, haunting ones, and interestingly at a diagonal, off-center, off-kilter. And now we're going to focus a little bit on this ambivalence moment, this emotional confusion, and a series of drawings. And what Sarah Softness, the curator, pulls out is this unusual repeated gesture of the outstretched arm. Is it longing, loving? Is it do you need assistance? Are you asking somebody to stop? What does this mean? It's something he would repeat again and again, this outstretched arm. And art historically, I take you to one of the most famous images, a war image too. Goya was a critic of the war, and here we have the French execution of a prisoner in Spain. And art historically speaking, you have religious figures also with raised arms. And El Greco, for Boris, was very much an artistic mentor. Do you see the elongated form and the darker palette that really spoke to Boris? And this image is at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, so something Boris would have known. The other, I'm going to go back for a second. The other element that Sarah Softness pulls out is from the Passover liturgy. It's the famed section, with a mighty hand and an outstretched arm, right? Did God take us from this place as he did from Egypt? And yet, of course, we know the dark side of the outstretched hand, which is the Heil salute from Hitler. So again, this ambivalence around the presentation of individuals. This is the largest canvas in the exhibition. We're not entirely sure, again, who these are. Some figures are up close. Could it be a self-portrait? And in art history, we always say, look at the sky. Is it foreboding? Is it the blue? Is the black? What does it mean? Again, Boris would be somebody who would wake up at night with nightmares, and these are the kinds of haunting experiences. This is also one of the larger canvases, again, now getting more and more abstracted. And the other thing that spoke to Boris was poetry. Not only did he write his diaries, but poetry spoke to him. And let me give you a translation of this handwritten poem for you to read. 1 second. is it a shame? Notice how it ends, and the passion of a few on the outside, ready to help even by the cost of their own lives. Boris records when somebody kindly left him a sandwich where he was working or hid a potato for him. There were people who were in his life and who saved him at critical moments. This is another interesting piece with a surprising title, The Way of Liberty, ? Again, the figure from the back, we are with this person. We are seeing what they are seeing. It's not entirely clear what some of the elements are. Is that a Jeep that he's driving? He's learned to drive. More images, also he drew images of women, but fairly dark and nightmarish, again at this angle. This is an image, again, our curator, Sarah, is interpreting perhaps it is a ghost-like image of his mother. And what does this door frame mean? Is it a window? Is it a door? What is it? Again, by comparison to the portrait of his mother. Does he revisit this? Is this the ghostly version of his mother? Advocacy. Again, Boris would use his voice to remember what had happened to his family and to ensure that people knew this story. He wrote the New York Times and said, yes, December 8th was, of course, the Rumbula massacre in 1941, but the day before in 1941 was Pearl Harbor. Again, a day that would live in infamy, but for Boris, his story and this massacre should also be well known. Here is his studio. Boris was a disheveled, messy person, not very organized. He kept a lot of things together, thankfully for us. And if you look around in the studio, you'll see images. That is his girlfriend, Lubia, from 16, the love of his life. He would write often about her. And one of the effects of this experience of the ghetto and then the camps was Boris became a nocturnal person. It was safer to go out at night. His father would protect him and say, look, go to roll call and then go back to bed, hide out. You won't have to work. You're less likely to have something bad happen to him. And so, of course, New York City is a place you can live at night fairly conveniently. And one of the great things that Gertrude did for him is Gertrude got him a dog, a German Shepherd, Punch, to get Boris to go outside to walk the dog and not be so nocturnal. But that was his nature and one of the impacts of this experience. There she is again, and there she is over his head. He would take the small photograph and blow it up and have it with him. Now the advocacy, and again, is he goes back to Rumbula, to this memorial site in 1975. And it is really not a very well done memorial site, and he would advocate for years to make sure that the story was better told. He would take photographs, amateur photographs in black and white, here in color, and then here is the plaque that marks this. And you can see not a lot is written, and it says, in memory of the victims of fascism. I don't think that tells the complete story, and Boris was certainly advocating that more would be shared. He would make drawings, he would mark the graves, he would try to make meaning of that place, to mark it, to concretize it, this abandoned space in the forest. And he starts writing, again, he's an advocate, he's talking about the Latvian Jews, there's a society. He's writing to, again, correct the record. He is the voice of those who have no more voice. And then in the exhibition, back to Boris's art, he is, this is the last series he does in 2003 called the Axe series, appropriately. And does this relate to Rumbula, the cutting down of lives? Does this relate to his tasks in the camp where he's cutting firewood? Does this talk about the cutting down of young lives with wars and other things? it's open to interpretation, of course. This was actually very hard to do. He outsourced it to a friend to be so strong because, again, this is but 5 years before his death at 83. He has a friend who really ensures that it goes deeply into the wood. He begins writing his autobiography on the way back from Rumbulla. He has to write this down, and we at the foundation have published his autobiography, this memoir, both in English and in German. And this I find a haunting image where he is trying to find his sister. Now I understand why Riga has lost all its vivacious beauty, class, and glamour. My sister, Jenna, isn't there anymore. Not even her memory. No, Jenna, I did not even feel you there at Rumbulla. The place is too dreary for you. You must have flown away to a friendlier clime. Again, this remembrance. And I leave you again to share with you that Boris struggled in terms of how he would represent himself as an artist. He says, I would have liked to have made pretty pictures, but something always stopped me. This powerful experience that only as an artist he could convey to the rest of us. And again, I think these are some of the most powerful mid-century modern images, remembrances from sons to mothers, which I think in many ways encapsulates the mission of this museum. It is to remember the victims, it is to remember the survivors, and it is to engage and educate and empower. And so these artworks are very much a testament to the impact of great trauma. I mean, we know something of art therapy, this great trauma, and yet the human struggle to cope with this kind of loss and displacement. And I think Boris Lurie was remarkable as an artist and as an individual, and what a legacy has given us. And I'm so delighted to be able to share it with you this evening and in your beautiful galleries. Thank you. Okay.
Is this it? Well, first of all, thank you, Stephanie. It was very enlightening to learn a bit more about Boris, and I hope this encourages people to continue to come back and explore the temporary exhibit. We're at the point in the evening, we want to be able to give you all a chance to ask questions. I can get us started here. One of the questions I was thinking about, because as you know, I work in the education department, how can educators or students and general audiences really engage meaningfully with this exhibit so that they can better understand the intersection of art, Holocaust memory, and really the post-war American culture, given his experience?
Well, the first thing they did is they hired you to figure this all out. I would offer what makes part of this story particularly remarkable is how young he was. He was 16. Again, I happen to know some 16-year-olds. And this experience, and that he would then, at age 22, as the very first thing he would do to come to America and pursue art, and that this would be the subject that would occupy him. Here he is in the art capital. There are many artists. It's the heyday of abstract expressionism. He could have gone in many directions, but this was pulling him. And so this is a story that was his, it was private, and now we are sharing it, and it has to be shared for a reason. It has to be shared so people understand what has happened, and obviously to never let anything like this happen again.
Certainly. So you've clearly had a lot of experience in the art world and different exhibitions. What do you think makes this particularly unique compared to other exhibitions maybe you've been working with or that you've seen?
I'm not aware of any of the questions, so I really have to think here a moment.
Putting you on the spot. That's
So what
my
I would
goal.
tell you, what makes this museum so special is I love, and I would say art museums are at fault. We don't do enough to bring in archival materials, these tangible items of a life. Again, we want art history to be about the objects, but it is always about a life. It is about the training artists have had, their experiences. So I really applaud you for being so open to have these original documents. And they pull you powerfully into that moment, into the experiences. So I think that really heightens the experience. We don't want this to be a show of biography. I think the artwork needs to stand on its own, and I think it does. And yet biography is so powerful in this case.
And the last one I'll ask, then I'll open it up to our audience because I'm sure there are lots of questions. You and I had a really nice conversation the other day, and one of the things you wanted to highlight was just some interesting things about Boris, and you shared with us. Is there a particular memorable or surprising story about Boris that maybe the exhibit doesn't capture, or even that it does, that might not stand out for some of us, about his rebellious spirit or his refusal to compromise as an artist or an individual? It's a large question. I'm sorry.
Sure. So I would tell you that there are many remarkable things about Boris. So first of all, again, his formal education ends at 16, but he loves to learn. He was always seeing every foreign film in New York. He was always reading. He was reading the newspapers. So his cultural heritage, although he was not very religious, but he was identifiably culturally Jewish, and education was highly valued for him. And at the end of his life, it was important for him to be buried in Israel, which is where his father was buried as well, too. And his father, I didn't get into it, but his father set the stage for the Boris Lurie Art Foundation because he created a significant wealth in real estate. And if you look Boris Lurie up, is one of the first stories talks about how the foundation began with a fairly large sum because Boris was able to take his father's inheritance and even parlay it further. And he was proud to be good at business and stock picking as well, too. Boris was a great and dear friend, and he loved nothing more than a political debate. He liked to mix it up with you. He was a person of strong opinions. He was an ardent Zionist, and he was very much a New Yorker. I mean, New York is a place that all kinds of people have come together. And New York City in the 1950s is where the artistic center of the universe was. And Boris was at the right place, and he would shift his gears and get involved with what was in the air, abstract expressionism and the early days of pop. And he would be the co-founder of an important artistic chapter that we're trying to make better known.
Amazing. All right, at this time, I'd like to give our audience a chance to ask some questions. If you'd like to ask a question, we have a couple of our colleagues in the audience with microphones. I'm trying to see with the lights. It's kind of hard to tell. Just raise your hand, and one of my amazing colleagues will come.
Yeah, I know this to be a curious audience, and I have seated the audience with my dear friends and one of my best questionnaires, my friend Myra Weiss, who sits on the Smithsonian Advisory Board, and her husband Hal. But we had lunch before, and I gave her the book so that she wouldn't have to ask any questions today. She's already read the book. But Myra, feel free to ask a question if you like, or anyone else.
Go ahead, Aaron.
You said that he wasn't successful during his lifetime. Did he ever sell any of his paintings? Do people privately own them? Are you able to track who owns his paintings?
Yes, yes, and yes. So this was a difficult time. There were a lot of artists. They weren't making a lot of money, and people were frankly not buying art. And he was part of the downtown scene, and the action was the uptown galleries. That's where things were bought. And there were a lot of European artists who were coming to New York and being better known in New York. So he didn't see what I would call commercial success. He did have exhibitions. Gertrude Stein was a great promoter in her gallery. He did sell work. He had a habit later in life of buying his artwork back because he wanted to have it with him again. He is in major collections. He had a major show during his lifetime at the Arturo Schwarz Gallery in Milan, Italy. His work is in museums in Israel. His work is in the National Gallery in the United States and the Museum of Modern Art. And he was also included in artist print anthologies. So he was recognized in his time, but his artwork in this no period is very anti-establishment. It's much tougher artwork, and it's much more abstract. So it was just sort of a very different type of artwork, but he was critically reviewed and followed in his day. But it actually wasn't that important to him. But he always lived very modestly, even after he inherited. He lived a very kind of bohemian life in New York.
Let's see if we have any others.
Did he do any paintings or sketches while he was in the concentration camp?
Thank you. Your question was, do you want to repeat it?
Yes.
Sophia?
Oh, okay. Did he do any sketches or paintings while he was in the concentration camp, or was this all done later from memory?
Thank you. So yes, this was done later. The works are dated, and we have a good sense. Also, he ripped pages out of a notebook, and we know that they all come from the same notebook. However, when he was being forced out of the Riga ghetto, he ran back into the apartment, and he grabbed paper and a pencil. So of the last, aside from photographs, which he would go back at night to get because he was, he realized that was important, one of the last things he grabbed was paper and pencil. We have no idea where those things were. But it also spoke to his identity. Like, again, what are you going to take? What do you cherish? If he were musical, it could have been a musical instrument, but he was artistic, and so that was important to him.
Right. 1 second, Aaron will be up.
You're keeping me on my toes here. I just started this job in April, so.
Well
My
done.
question is actually about his family. I found it interesting. You said his mother was a dentist. Was
Yes.
that unusual at the time? For a
I
woman to be a
would think
dentist?
so. She was professionally trained. Boris liked to sleep in the dentist chair when she wasn't using it. Very proud that she was a professional woman, yes.
And his sister that I think brought the family over to New
Yes.
York, what did she or her family do?
She led a remarkable life too, so she was sent away to school, would marry, she would divorce, and in one of those twists of fate, would marry an Italian count. And her father, to support her interests, bought her some racehorses. And so if you look her up on the internet, the only thing you'll find is references to her horses and horse racing. So the different paths in that family. Myra.
Is he represented in any of the major museums in the country?
So he did some work, some prints, and those are at the National Gallery and at the Museum of Modern Art, part of our portfolio of various modern artists of the period. So it's a great honor that he's included. He's in an upcoming show at the Eskenazi Museum called Remembrance and Renewal, American Artists and the Holocaust, 1940 to 1970, and he's called out as one of the major figures in that exhibition. Yale University Press catalog, and it opens in September. His work was collected by the dealer Arturo Schwartz and given to museums in Israel. But that is one of my tasks, is to make sure that his artwork is better seen so future audiences and scholars can avail themselves. And he can be reconsidered and brought back more fully and justifiably into the art conversation. We're going to go to this side of the room, I think.
Yeah, we'll mix it up.
I'm just curious how his father accumulated so much money. Was that in New York, or was that still in Latvia and didn't lose it to the Germans?
So his father was a great businessman. He was a very engaging person. He always built networks. Even in the camps, he would smuggle black market things. So, but he was also very conservative. There were many points during their journey where Boris wanted to try to escape with others, and his father said, "No, don't do it. It's too dangerous." And so there was a little friction in that case. And then again, when he came back, he would make relationships. Even in Germany, for that 1 year, 1945 to 46, he was starting new businesses and working. And in Latvia, again, the political situation would change, but he would have a factory, and then there would be a law that you would have to be Latvian to have a factory. So he'd take his foreman and said, "Guess what? It's your factory," and he would have to sign the papers over, but he really was in charge. So he was a remarkable individual by all accounts.
Go ahead, Aaron.
Hey, I just wanted to say thank you, first of all, for being here and for the whole team that made this exhibition possible. It's beautiful and powerful, of course. I just wanted to ask, if you had any specific thoughts on where his work fits in with other artists who survived the Holocaust or maybe perished in the Holocaust, just kind of giving some contextualization to his work with these peers.
Yeah, thank you. I think that work still has to be done, and that's why I mentioned this exhibition coming up. So as we know that that people tried to bring the arts into their lives in these terrible circumstances. We know of musical compositions. There's quite a bit of Holocaust music compositions. We know of theatrical performances. Artwork was a little harder, both to create with supplies and to maintain. So as far as I know, and again, I have more to educate myself on, this is something that scholars need to really focus on. And then this kind of memory work. If you go through the galleries here at this wonderful museum, there are artistic representations by survivors. They were done later. They were done in a very compelling artistic style. However, was it a one-off? Was it commissioned? This was a series. This was something that transfixed Boris. Boris had to make these artworks. So this is of a whole, and again, artists often work in series, and I didn't do a good enough job always to point out the dates of things. Some of the works were actually done later in the 70s, because it was a subject that he returned to. But a great question, and there's scholarship to be done ahead. Thank you.
Trying to, Aaron, yep.
I have a question about his life. Did he ever marry and have a family?
Yes, thank you. He would marry. He would be married for some 10 years, a very vivacious person by all accounts, quite a study in contrasts. They would not have any children. She would be involved in the art world too, worked a little with Andy Warhol and others. And then she went to Europe, and they didn't have any contact. Although she has a big cachet of his work, and unfortunately we don't know where those objects are. At the foundation, we are working on a biography for Boris. We're also working on something called the Catalogue Raisonné, an inventory of his works. So we're hoping by the catalog for this exhibition and the touring show, other people will say, maybe I have a work by Boris Lurie. I didn't know that. And so we're hoping these works pop up. That's always the discovery of doing an exhibition, is more works come to the fore.
Aaron, I think we have one up front here as well. We have time for one more.
Stephanie, the platform of an artist's art foundation is very interesting to me. And are there other foundations that exist that are promoting artists?
Thank you. This is an exciting new world that I am just exploring myself. And I would say that in the United States, there is a growing number of artist-endowed foundations. Surprisingly, one of the wealthiest artists in his day, and his home is still available to visit, was Michelangelo. Michelangelo also really thought about his legacy. To think about your legacy, somebody has to care. So many women artists, their work is thrown, out, upon their death. Often the children or nieces and nephews are pulled in to help with the legacy. Sometimes you'll have a wonderful spouse who will do that. In this case, Boris had Gertrude, and that's unusual. A dealer has many artists in their stable, but Gertrude had this special relationship and connection, so she ensured that. And artist foundations have one of two or three things. They have a lot of artwork left over, depending how successful the artist was. They might have some cash left over if they did well commercially or from family sources. And sometimes they have real estate. Artists are sometimes going into bad neighborhoods and then turning them into good neighborhoods. So when they pass away, the value of the studio or the home. And I would say in America, it's an interesting phenomenon. Be on the lookout for this. Because the art world moved from Paris to New York, and many American artists became successful, they would then have funds to then go on to have an artist foundation and move forward. You know artist foundations, the Andy Warhol Foundation, the Robert Mapplethorpe Foundation, Some people had other champions. Georgia O'Keeffe had a Texas collector who helped found the Georgia O'Keeffe Museum. Again, there has to be somebody who cares to ensure the artwork survives, is well cataloged and preserved. And the archives, artist archives, are a very special thing. So on one hand, you want artists to keep things, but don't keep everything. It's a lot to take care of. So we at the foundation have some 3,000 works by Boris, and we have his archives, and then other works that he collected by other artists in his artistic circle. Yeah.
Wow. I think we have time for one more.
I just looked him up on Wikipedia, and it said that though he lived as a penniless artist, Lurie amassed $80 million by buying penny stocks and real estate. So is that the source of the foundation's resources financially?
Yes, yes, indeed. And Boris had a New York Times obituary. And again, in New York, as an artist, that's actually a very big thing that tells you that he was really well known and recognized. He was written about. He was, again, he created, the No Art is much more challenging work and is provocative for its time because it deals with the political issues of the day. He came back from this experience, and he, again, had the wartime series, but then would go on to do other artwork that was important for having people confront what had happened in Europe. Again, he's from Europe, he's coming to America. You don't have the kind of devastation in America that you had in Europe and in Russia and other places of the conflict. So very, very different moments and chapters in his life. And he would inspire other artists working today too. There are a number of artists who collect his work and believe strongly in him, like the LA artist Paul McCarthy. Not the Beatle, but Paul McCarthy, the LA artist.
Well, thank you, Stephanie, for really illuminating Boris's work and his life for us tonight. I think it's a really compelling story and a really compelling exhibition. And thank you again, Jillian, for joining us this evening, and really to all of our supporters here tonight. Our exhibit and museum shop are also open tonight until 9 p.m. The catalog that you have probably seen display is actually a really interesting book, and it is for sale in our gift shop for anyone that is interested. The exhibit is here through December 5th. Our next program is also around the corner, so we invite you to come join us on Sunday, August 3rd, which is also Tisha B'Av, a Jewish day of mourning at 2:30 p.m. for the screening of The Ice Cream Man, followed by a talkback with film producer Greg Malone. The Ice Cream Man tells this true story of Ernest Kahn, a popular Jewish ice cream parlor owner who, shortly after the Nazi invasion of the Netherlands, finds himself targeted by the infamous Butcher of Lyon, Klaus Barbie. Register for that event at holocaustcenter.org. We would love to have you join us. And we'd also like to have you please join us for our dessert reception that will take place in the lobby. And we thank you for coming out and joining us tonight, and safe travels home.
Thank you, Rick. Can I ask you one thing? I always, in my 20-year career as an art museum director, I always ask the audience one thing. So one, come back, and come back with a child, preferably your own, because it is what you value. It is the things that you think are important. It is your cultural heritage, and we need to make sure education is the heart of every museum. And this is an exhibition that will spark dialogue and stories and interest and many great questions like you've all peppered me with tonight. So do me a favor, come back, bring a child. That is what we have to do, all of us. Nothing to do but to try to make a better world for everyone. So thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie.